And I think there's 10 times the power in your music. But what I do want to talk about for just a little bit is happiness. The happiness retreat. I started coming to happiness retreat when I was 17 years old, just a few years ago. Okay. And I always have, all these years, found happiness to be here. Haven't you? Yes. Yeah. Happiness we understand. But what I want to talk about in this safe place, in this place where happiness makes unhappiness feel so far away, is the fact that we need a happiness retreat. The fact that we have to retreat to happiness means that a lot of life is not necessarily very happy. That's true for me. Is it true for you? Anyone? Yes. Unhappiness is a painful thing, but it is not necessarily a sign that God is not with us. In fact, I believe that in our unhappy times, that's the soil in which God can make wonderful things grow. Think about your day. If there had never been a blind person, Jesus wouldn't have got to perform a miracle. If there had not been a woman at the well whose life was turned upside down 5 times, she wouldn't have needed Jesus to set it right again. If there wasn't a painful earth, we wouldn't need a painless heaven. And so, if you'll endure, I'd like to tell you a few stories. Can you listen to a few stories? Yes. Meet John Newton. John Newton is probably the biggest name in Christianity who didn't make it into the Bible. And John Newton was a very, very strong finisher. But he did not start very strong. John Newton was raised with a loving mother and a father who was a sailor. He wasn't home very much of the time. When John Newton was a very small child, sadly his mother died. And John Newton grew up wanting to follow in his father's footsteps. More than anything, he wanted to be on a boat like his dad. His dad said what a lot of dads do, "Son, do anything else." He tried to send him away to school. He got kicked out. John Newton finally convinced his father to let him go to sea, and he became a sailor at the age of 11. Very small, like Avery age. And John Newton was a terrible sailor. Horrible. He didn't do what they wanted him to do. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. Every other sailor on the ship couldn't stand him. As a teenager, it got so bad that they tied him to that great big pole you see on the top of the ship. They tied him to that and they whipped him with a leather whip 96 times. And it didn't work. It didn't work. Finally, they had a great idea. Let's get rid of him. The next place they stopped was a little village in Western Africa, and they sold teenage John Newton. They sold him to people who sold slaves. Okay? The people who sold slaves sold the teenager to slaves. And teenage John Newton became a slave to slaves. This went on for several years. His father finally found out about it back in England, paid enough money to buy him back. John Newton went back to sea. He got a job then, believe it or not. Talk about hypocrisy. He got a job buying and selling slaves out of Africa. Until one night, you could have seen this story coming, right? Until one night, a terrible storm came. If you've never been on a boat, when a storm comes up, it's a scary thing. The rain makes the boat, it's scary. And in that night, John Newton got down on his knees and he prayed to God. And he said, God, if you will get me out of this, I will give you my life. Do you know God answers prayers like that?
Yes.
John Newton survived.
I don't know about me.
Yes, I do. I do. That storm ended. John Newton got back on land, and that was it. No more boat for him. He went to school, he began to study, and John Newton became a rector. A rector is kind of like a part-time pastor, part-time janitor. At the St. Mary Walworth Church on Lombard Street in London, still there today. And he did that for years. John Newton, having been rescued as a slave from slaves, and rescued from a life of selling people to other people, gave his life to God. Now, the church stuck. Years later, one of the guys in his church, a guy with the wonderful name of William Wilberforce, came to old John Newton and said, John, Brother John, I think God wants me to be a minister like you. And John Newton gave William Wilberforce this advice: stay where you are. Do what you do for God. What William Wilberforce did was he was in the government of England. And he's the person who ended slavery in England on the advice of John Newton to stay where you are. What a life. What a life. You may think you don't know anything that John Newton ever had to say, but you do. And if you'll do me a tremendous favor, you'll sing those words with me. The words of John Newton, once a trader and slave, set free by the grace of God. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I've always loved that story. As a child who was sort of hard to get to do anything you wanted him to do,